Hello everyone, it's Anthony Burton here for ABLG Design and welcome to what is a different kind of video for you. As you will have seen from our previous videos, we do illustrations, but we also cover other areas of graphic design, including designs for print and logo design, to name a couple. So we thought we would do a tutorial looking at our approach to logo design within Adobe Illustrator CC after receiving several requests to cover this subject. The logo which is currently on screen is what we'll be creating and will be the first part of a two-part tutorial. The first part will cover the construction of this logo, while providing a brief introduction to some of the tools Illustrator has to offer, while the second part will cover our methods to exporting this logo into different formats as if we would for a client. But before we get started, there is also a PDF version of this tutorial which is available in the description below. So now let's begin setting up our document by coming up to File, and then left clicking New. And that will open up the new document window, which may be slightly different depending on your version of Illustrator. And here are all the document presets you can choose from, or you can enter your own specified width and height in these boxes here. But for this tutorial we're going to go with an A4 size document, which is a decent size for us when designing and also helps when looking at our designs in printed format. So by using an A4 size document, that sets our units to millimeters. Now you can change this by left clicking on this drop down arrow here, and that will give you all of the available units to choose from. But we're going to stick with millimeters, as we'll show you later on how you can enter a different unit and Illustrator will automatically convert it back to the original source chosen here. So for the orientation we're going to be going with a landscape with one artboard, but towards the end of the tutorial we will show you how you can create additional artboards. And then for the colour mode, we're going to stick with the default CMYK colour mode, which is for print, but feel free to use an RGB colour mode, which is for screens. Now you can change it later on by coming up to File and then clicking on Document Colour Mode. So with our settings in place, we're going to click Create, and there we have our new artboard created, set to our A4 size, or whichever dimensions you've chosen. So now what we're going to do is create our first leaf shape. So if we come over to the toolbar, and first what we want to make sure is we don't have a fill when we create our leaf shape. So left click on the fill, and then if we come down to these small squares here, which is our colour, our gradient, the one that we want is this one with the red line going through it, which is None. So if we left click on None, now as you can see that has created a red line through our fill. So that shows us any shapes that we create now will only have a stroke applied to it. So a way of alternating between the stroke and the fill, you can left click on one or the other, or you can just hit X on your keyboard and that will alternate between the two. And the one that's active is the one that's above the other. So I'm going to leave the stroke as active, and then what I'm going to do is come up and use the Ellipse Tool. Now you may not find the Ellipse Tool in your Illustrator. That might be because it's hidden by the rectangle tool. If it is, just left click and hold, and that will open up the numerous shape tools Illustrator has to offer. Now the Ellipse Tool is the third one down, which is what we want, or you can hit L on your keyboard. So with the Ellipse Tool selected, you can create a circle any number of ways by just left clicking and dragging, and that will create a free-formed circle like so. Or if we backspace that, another method is if you want a more constrained perfect circle, just hold down Shift, left click and drag, and as you can see that creates a perfect shape for us. Now if you don't see these pink lines which are currently on screen, these are the smart guides. Just come up to View and then down to Smart Guides and just make sure you've got the smart guides checked. If not, just left click and that will enable them for you. So I'm just going to backspace and delete this secondary circle. And a third method of creating a circle is if we left click anywhere in the artboard like so, that will open up this dialog box here where we can enter our own specified width and height. Now you want to make sure you've got this icon available. I'm just going to left click to deactivate it, because you may find it's like this, which is a broken chain. If you left click on it, that has now linked our width and our height and constrained the properties. So in the width, I'm going to put 200 px, which is for pixels. And as I mentioned earlier, you can enter a different unit, different to the one that you choose in the new document window. And as you can see, Illustrator in the height has taken that 200 pixels and automatically converted it to millimeters, which was our original source. So if we left click on OK, and here we have our perfect 200 pixels by 200 pixel circle, we're now going to create the second circle. So if we hold down Shift and Alt, and then left click and hold on the center point of our circle, and then drag that across to the edge of our first circle, and then let go, we now have our two circles created and already have our leaf shape forming in the center. So I'm just going to come over and grab the main selection tool in the toolbar, or V on the keyboard, and then left click outside and drag over our two circles to select them. So now what we need to do is we need to cut our leaf shape out from these two circles. So to do that, we're going to come over to the Shape Builder tool and then left click on that, and that has given us a plus sign next to our cursor indicating we can merge shapes into one. And we don't want to do that, we want to subtract. So if we hold down Alt, that changes the plus to a minus. So now if we left click and drag, notice the areas are highlighting as we go through them, and then let go. That has now cut away the unwanted areas and left us with our leaf shape. So again, grabbing the main selection tool and drag that center like so. What we're going to do now is just thicken our stroke a little bit. Now you can do that by coming over to the stroke window, or if you don't see this, come up to Window and left click on Stroke. And that is the same for any of the panels we mention in this tutorial. If you don't see any of them, just come to Window and you can access them from Actions down to Variables just by left clicking on them, and it will add them to your workspace. So inside the stroke window, if you don't at first see any of these options that are currently on screen, just come up to the right hand corner of the window and left click on this burger icon, and it will say Show Options. And then if you left click that, that will open up these options for you. So the one we want to focus on is the weight. And you can increase and decrease the weight by left clicking either the top or bottom arrows here, or if you left click on this drop down arrow here, that will give you more specific points to choose from. So we're just going to left click the top arrow a couple of times like so, and I think 3 points is a decent size. So now we can start creating our duplicate leaves that will create our abstract flowers. So in order to do that, if we come over to the rotate tool here, which is R on a keyboard, that will generate this blue target icon, which is the center point. So any object that we rotate will be based on the positioning of this target. So I'm going to left click and drag that down to our bottom anchor of our leaf shape like so, because that is where we want our leaves to rotate round. And then holding down Alt and then left clicking on the target, you may have to do it twice. That will open up this rotate dialog box. And as you can see, it's remembered the previous settings from when I created this logo. So I know that 30 degrees works for this in the angle, but feel free to experiment with whatever angle works for you. And because we've got the preview box selected, that is showing us how our leaf will look when it's rotated at 30 degrees. Now, rather than click OK, because that will take the leaf that we've just created and rotate that, we actually want to make a copy. So if we come over and left click on copy, you can see now that it's made a copy of our original leaf but rotated it at the 30-degree angles we've just set. So now we need to duplicate the rest of our leaves to form the flower. So rather than go through the dialog box again, in Illustrator you can repeat the previous action. And to do that, if you hold down Command if you're on a Mac, Control if you're on a PC, and then hit D, that has duplicated the previous leaf and rotated it at 30-degree angles based on the positioning of the previous leaf. So if we continue to hold down Command or Control and hit D several times, you can now see that that creates our flower, like so. And then to just get the main selection tool, you can hold down Command or Control and then left click and drag over our flower, and that selects all of our individual leaf shapes. Now what we need to do is we need to convert these strokes into paths. Now you can do that a couple of ways by coming up to Object and choosing Expand, or what we're going to do is come down to Path and then choose Outline Stroke. Now that has turned all of our individual leaves from strokes to paths, and you can see that in the fill and stroke that has automatically changed, where the stroke now has none in it but the fill has a colour. So now what we need to do is merge this into one unified shape, as it's still built up of individual leaves. So to do that we need to go to the Pathfinder window, and again you can access this by coming up to Window and then down to Pathfinder, and this will open up the window of Pathfinder and Shape Mode options. Now the one we want to focus on is this one here, which is Merge. So left click on Merge. And now what that's done is that's taken all of our individual leaf shapes and merged them into this one unified flower shape. So now I'm just going to grab our main selection tool again and then go into one of the corners, holding down Shift and Alt, then left click and dragging inwards just to resize it like so. So now that we've got our unified flower shape, if we come over to the Layers window, which is also accessible via Window and then down to Layers, if we left click on this arrow here, that shows us the contents of the layer, and as you can see our flower is currently in a group. Now if we left click next to the group, this drop down arrow here, that then shows us the contents of this group, which is a lot of paths, but the one we want to focus on is the compound path, which is the main shape. So if we left click hold and drag that to the top outside of the group like so, we can delete this group because the paths that are inside that's left indicate the negative spaces, which we don't want. So if we left click on the group and then come down to this dustbin icon here and left click that, that deletes all the paths that we don't need. So now we can colour our compound path, our flower shape. Now feel free to use a solid colour or a gradient. For this tutorial we're going to go with a gradient. So we're going to come up to Window and then down to Gradient and left click on that to open up the gradient window. And then I'm just going to left click in the gradient slider, and as you can see that's coloured our flower now in the default white to black gradient. So what I want to do now is add a third colour stop. So to do that, staying inside the gradient slider, if we just come down underneath, our cursor changes to having a plus next to it, and this indicates where we can insert an additional colour stop. So I'm just going to left click, and as you can see that's created a third colour stop for us. So you can reposition a colour stop by left clicking and dragging it left to right, or if you come down to location and then left click this drop down arrow here, you can see the percentages going up in tens give you a more accurate positioning of where you want your colour stop. So I'm going to be nice and even and choose 50%. And now we're ready to start adding our colours. Now to do that we need to go to the swatches window, and again if you don't see this enabled, just come over to window and then left click on swatches, and that will open up this panel for you. And the colours I'm going to go with are these monochromatic ones in this folder here, and for the middle I'm going to go for a nice light grey, this CMYK20. So I'm going to left click hold and drag that down into our gradient and then on top of our colour stock, and you'll see this green plus sign. Let go, and that has added that colour into that colour stock there. So for the left and right colour stocks I'm going to go for a darker grey in the same folder, so I'm going to go with the CMYK50, and again same as before, left click hold and drag that onto the colour stock. And then I'm going to do the same again, same colour for the black colour stock. And there we have our silver coloured gradient in our flower, and I'm just going to left click away so you can see that. So with our flower finished, it's now time to start creating the background circle. So for that we're going to use the Ellipse Tool again, which is again L on the keyboard, and then to just create a perfect circle, holding down Shift, left click and drag like so, and you'll notice it's still coloured in that silver gradient, so we need to change that. So I'm going to come back to the swatches, and sticking in the same colour scheme I'm going to choose this darker CMYK90 colour. And at the moment you can tell that the background circle is above our flower shape. So if we come back to the layers window and then left click on the ellipse, hold and drag that down, that brings it behind our flower. So before we go any further, I'm just going to hold down Command or Control to get the main selection tool, left click and drag over both of our elements like so, and I want to do a horizontal and vertical align. Now you can do that by coming up to the top bar here and you've got the alignment options here, or you can come up to window and then down to align, and that will open up the same options in this window here. Now what we want to make sure is the align to is set to align to artboard. So anything we align now will be aligned based on the positioning of the artboard. So we're going to choose this horizontal align center, and as you can see that's centered them horizontal, and then we want a vertical align center. Now that has made both of our logo elements center of the artboard. So I'm just going to hold down Command or Control, click away, and there we have our logo icon, which is nearly finished. So now I'm going to come over and grab the direct selection tool, which is A on the keyboard, which allows you to select any part of the path and the anchor points, which we will go into more in depth in a separate video. We want to click on our background circle, because now what we're going to do is add the dark feathered edge to our circle. Now you can do this via using a gradient, but for this tutorial we're going to use an inner glow, and you can access that by coming up to Effect, then down to Stylize, and then choosing inner glow, and that will open up this window of options here. Now for the blend mode we're going to go with multiply. And what multiply does is whatever dark colour we choose in this white square here, that will interact with the object colour and multiply it, making it darker. So I'm going to click on this white box here, and that will open up the colour picker window, and I'm going to go with a basic black, nice pure black, and then left click OK. And already we can see a very thin faded dark ring going around our background circle. So I'm going to lower the opacity to 15%, make it nice and subtle. And then the blur determines the amount of glow we're going to have in our circle. So again, using pixels, I'm going to enter 21px, and then for the distribution of it, the positioning, we want it in the edge, but feel free to choose center if you wish, and then left click OK. And then I'm just going to click away, and there you can see, very subtle but noticeable if you look closely, we've got that dark ring, this inner glow going around our background circle, which is a nice little subtle effect that really defines the silver gradient flower in the middle. So now our icon is finished, we're now going to add the text to our logo. So we can do that by coming back to the toolbar and choosing the Type tool, which is T on a keyboard. And to insert text, all you need to do is left click anywhere on the artboard like so. And that has inserted some text for us. Now for the original logo I did Baskerville Media, so I'm just going to keep it simple and type in Baskerville Media, but feel free to choose a different name. And keeping with the Baskerville Media theme, we're going to choose the font Baskerville. So firstly what we're going to do is hold down Command or Control and then hit A to select it all. And then to change the font, you can come up to the character options in the top bar here, or if we come up to Window and then down to Type, you can access the character window here. And that will open up this window and give you more options than you get in the top bar. So to change the font, I'm just going to left click in here, or if you left click this drop down arrow here, you can access all of the fonts that's installed in your computer. But as I said, for this, I'm going to just type in Baskerville and choose that, which I believe is the default font you get with your computer. And then I'm just going to change the size, make it nice and big to, I'm going to make it 60 I think. And that has inserted our text. So we're going to do some minimal styling, as typography is a very complex subject and would require a separate video to go more in depth. So for now what we're going to do is, going back in the character window, if we focus on these icons at the bottom here, if we go to these two capitalized T's and left click on that, that has now turned all of our text into uppercase. Now depending on what font you've used, your font may look rather condensed now that you've turned it to uppercase. So what we can do is, if we come over to this V and A icon with a double arrow underneath, that is our tracking. And what the tracking does is, that sets the overall space for the whole word. Now you can increase or decrease the tracking by left clicking the top and bottom arrows, or you can left click on this drop down arrow here, and that gives you a list of numeric options to choose from, either minus or plus. And as I go over each one, you can see it automatically changing to suit the amount of spacing we're going with. So I'm going to go with 100 and left click on that. Now you can also hold down Shift and then left click either the top or bottom arrow and increase or decrease in tens. So I'm just going to left click the top arrow, and I think already 110 is looking pretty good, so I'm going to leave it at that, but feel free to experiment with more or less spacing depending on how it looks for you. So lastly, before I do anything else, I'm going to colour our text in the same colour as our background circle. So coming back to the swatches, and in this grey folder I'm going to select that CMYK 90 again, and that has coloured our text. And then holding down Command or Control, we can just drag and position our text like so. But I think what I'll also do is, I'm just going to grab the main selection tool again, then just left click and drag over all of our logo like so, and then come up to the alignment options and just give it a horizontal align center. So it's all aligned evenly in our artboard. So I'm just going to click away, and there we have our completed logo. So with it finished, what if you want to look at the possibilities of editing the logo and seeing how you can adapt the design, but you don't want to affect what you've already done? What you can do in Illustrator is create multiple artboards, as I mentioned earlier, and that will allow you to copy a logo, work in a separate artboard without affecting the original one. Now, there are several methods to creating new artboards. Now, what we're going to do is show you the quickest method to creating an artboard, because if you have a tight deadline, you need to be very quick in finishing that logo and presenting it to the client. But we will, in a separate video, go more in depth in how to create artboards and also the distribution of them and what else they can do for you. But for now, what we're going to do is just select all of our logo again, like so. And then we're going to come over to the toolbar and select this artboard tool. Now, before I do anything, I'm just going to zoom out. So you can do this by grabbing the zoom tool here, or if you hold down the space bar, then Command or Control, and then press Alt as well, you get the minus showing we can zoom out, and then just click out a few times like so. And then what we can do now is, with the artboard and our logo selected, hold down Alt and that will give you this double cursor. Then if we click anywhere in the artboard, like so, and then drag across and just drop that over there, what that's done is that's created a new artboard for us, but also duplicated our logo at the same time in its original position as what it is in our artboard 1. So now I'm going to grab the main selection tool. Now, having created a copy of our design, what we normally do is we put it in a separate layer. So in order to do that, if we come back to the layers window and then come to the bottom where this outline squared icon is with a plus in it, if we left click that, you can see that's created a new layer for us with its own designated colour. Now if you double left click on that, that opens up the layer options where you can change the properties of the layer if you want to. You can rename the layer, or if you want to change the colour of that layer, just left click on this drop down arrow here and that will give you all of the colours available, or you can choose a custom colour if you wish. Now what we're going to do is just left click, drag and select our logo, and we can tell it's selected in the layers window by seeing these target icons here. They have colours next to them, and what we want to do is put our copied logo into the layer 2. So if we hold down Command or Control and then left click on the ellipse, then the compound path, and then if we left click on the text as well but hold and then drag that up into layer 2, that's put all of our elements in layer 2, and we can tell this because the guides are now the same colour as the red colour of layer 2. So now I'm just going to close our layer 1 and then open our layer 2, and then we're just going to do some basic editing with this, nothing too complicated. So I'm going to left click outside on the artboard and drag over our icon like so. And then again holding down Shift and Alt, grabbing one of the corners, left clicking and dragging inwards to downsize our icon. And then just basic editing on the text, we're going to come back and select the Type tool. And I think I will, let's left click next to the M in Media and then backspace and enter to bring it underneath. And then holding down Command or Control and then hitting A to select it all, we'll give it a center alignment. Now you can do that again by coming up to the character options in the top bar here and choosing this middle one here, or you can come up to Window and then again coming down to Type, but this time choosing Paragraph, and that will give you a few more options to choose from here. So again we're going to use the Align Center, and that has centered all of our text, and then just holding down Command or Control to get the main selection tool, dragging over both of our elements and then back up to give it a horizontal align center. So now we've centered our logo elements, there's this big gap here. So in order to bring it closer, select anywhere in the artboard and then left click and drag just over our text like so, and then holding down shift and then just pressing the top arrow key on your keyboard a few times, that will nudge the text or an object closer. And I think that looks pretty good to me. Yep, and there we have our two logos finished. So feel free to experiment further if you wish. If not, then that ends this tutorial. So hopefully you have found this useful and learnt something new about logo design while providing you with a little more understanding of how Illustrator works and also how to utilise the tools it has to offer when applying it to your own designs. So join us in the next video where we'll be taking this logo we've just created and showing you our approach to exporting it into different formats as if we would for a client. And if you've enjoyed this video, then please remember to hit like and also that red subscribe button. And if you have any suggestions on future content for this channel, then we would seriously love to hear from you. So thank you for watching and we will catch you in the next video. Bye.